Hello, Chaos and Caffeine family. I'm your host, Danielle Kelly, and today we're diving deep into the art of organizing our chaotic lives with a very special guest. Please welcome Lisa Zawrotny, the founder of Positively Productive Systems and the insightful voice behind the Positively Living podcast. Lisa is a productivity and organizing coach who specializes in helping overwhelmed individuals, especially those of us juggling the unique challenges of ADHD parenting, find clarity, balance, and purpose. Her approach is rooted in compassion and practicality, empowering parents to create systems that work for their unique family dynamics. In today's episode, Lisa will share her expert strategies on managing time, reducing stress, and creating a more harmonious home environment. Whether you're navigating the daily whirlwind of ADHD parenting or simply seeking more structure in your life, Lisa's insights are sure to resonate. So grab your favorite cup, settle in, and let's explore how to bring more order and peace into our beautifully chaotic lives. Lisa, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I am delighted to be here. I cannot wait to dig into this with you because ADHD is a way of life for both of us, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So I am a sucker for a good origin story. I would love to know what brought you to your line of work or maybe your lifestyle.
So yeah, I've thought about I do have an origin story for the kind of coach that I am, but I have like a side origin story, which is great. Like side quests are so ADHD, it's kind of fitting, right? That brought me to my perspective and why we're even having a conversation. But I'll start very quickly in a nutshell to explain that I was a caregiver for my mom. And I had both of my kids during that time that I cared for her. She had Alzheimer's, and it was an incredibly difficult, overwhelming journey. It was survival mode at its most basic, and it was a turning point in my life that absolutely changed my perspective on how we see what we need to do as caregivers, as moms, as just people in this world trying to be productive and trying to get things done. It was like I was broken down almost in a way to be rebuilt back up, and it made me question everything about the expectations that we have on ourselves and what we do and how we do it. And I I came back from it. I was trying to heal myself. I was trying to raise my kiddos. And once I didn't need to be a caregiver for my mom anymore, I was trying to figure out what's the next path. I started clearing out, literally, actually physically, a path for us because so much had piled up on us. And I became a professional organizer and then realized, oh my goodness, no, there's so much about this that's mental and emotional. Let's get to that first. And so I've been making my way over the years from the sort of the declutter and the simplifier of wanting to help others once I figured it out myself to now saying, let's just start where we're at mentally and emotionally and declutter and simplify. And you can probably figure out immediately that that is so compatible with the ADHD world. To simplify, to declutter, to understand how much is going on in our headspace. But in the meantime, through this path, I actually ended up diagnosing my husband.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Through our relationship. So that's sort of the side quest, if you will, of understanding that his mind just worked differently, and there were a lot of frustrations, especially when I was struggling as much as I was. And I had to figure out, like, because I knew where his heart was. I knew who he was as a person. I knew how incredibly intelligent and capable he was. And there was a disconnect there, and I was trying to figure it out. And so I went down the Google rabbit hole and found a checklist for ADHD. and looked at it and basically checked off everything. And then very nervously handed it to him and said, has this ever been a point of discussion for you or your parents? Like, have you ever considered this? And what an aha moment for him. And I'm so glad that we had this initial conversation, not only for our relationship and for being a team through all our challenges, but also because then we could spot it very quickly in our children. And now to this day, I say, I pretty much live in a sea of ADHD, and here we are. So I'm living. Uh, I'm basically living all the conversations you have here on the podcast, Danielle.
So you are kind of reverse. And most of my parents that are on, well, you haven't been diagnosed, but most of us find out that we have it once we have kids. But you actually noticed before you guys hit that mark. That's the first for me here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. And we also joke a little bit because sometimes I feel like I exhibit traits,
Mm.
but we jokingly say we're pretending I don't because we need one of us to lead the march. But in all seriousness, though, what we talk about is wherever you are and whatever, I mean, life is a spectrum. It's about having the heart and the tools to live your best life with whatever it is that you have. But yeah, I do feel very lucky that we had this conversation ahead of time because I'll tell you, my husband, like you, sort of reverse engineered everything that he went through, the struggles that he had, and I said, so much of it was bypassed, so much of it was missed because of how capable and how intelligent you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I've had a couple of guests on, but especially girls typically can mask well in an academic setting. So they're not as recognized as the hyperactive, impulsive boys who can't sit still. So if you
Yeah.
do well in an academic setting, you really are like skipped over, not seen.
Yeah, and if you don't have that hyperactive tendency, that's a really interesting point. That's like I think one of the may perhaps ease more readily spotted clues, maybe.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, because my husband's definitely not tending toward hyperactive, but the attention deficit part for sure.
Mm.
And if you didn't have that hyperactive tendency, if you were, if you played well by the rules otherwise, and you could get away with, the 11th hour kind of studying and getting in there. And yeah, you're right. It can mask so easily.
Mm. So you told me off audio that you related to Dr. Narissa Bauer's episode of Chaos and Caffeine, and I would love for you to unpack that with me.
Absolutely. So, what I was saying was there was one phrase in there in particular. Now, she lays out so much goodness in
Mm.
terms of understanding and respecting what our kiddos are going through and what we're going through. I
Yeah.
appreciated so much that she talked about that sort of the grieving process that we can go through, and not because it's an issue to have ADHD, but that anytime you find that you have some kind of challenge and you weren't able to identify it, you miss a period of time or you grieve for a period of time that you could have had a different attitude about it. And I know I saw that with my husband, where he thought, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Why couldn't I make it through college?" Like it's the what is wrong with me, and that hurts my heart so much. And it's a big part of what I do now as a productivity coach. Even my podcast, the subtitle is Shame-Free Productivity Conversations.
Mm.
Shame-free is so important to me, and yet I see it so much with ADHD. So I really appreciated that she talked about the grieving process that we go through and to be able to kind of release those expectations. But the phrase that was my favorite was connection over correction.
Mm.
And I sat with that a lot and thought about how I have been doing that with my kiddos. And of course, I've poured myself into studying our executive function. And I mean, it fits so perfectly, right, with productivity coaching and understanding flow state and habit development and, the neuroscience behind why we do what we do.
Yeah.
But, but I just love that idea that, listen, there's going to be delays and lags. And you need to accept it and then figure out, well, how do we create the tools to fix it? And I loved her compassionate approach, and then I loved thinking about how I have connected with my kids.
Mhm. I love that so much. Years ago, I took behavioral parent therapy, which you are supposed to do as a family, but I could not figure out a way to tell my kid at that time, like what we're doing and why we're here. So I took it individually.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the main themes of behavioral parent therapy. You parents sign up for it thinking they're going in to learn how to change their kid when the entire 8 weeks is to change you, to adapt you to the child that you have.
Yeah.
And the common theme was kind of connection over correction. Even when we are correcting, they suggest a gentle back touch or shoulder touch, or just to let you know I'm here, I'm not upset, we'll figure this out together, I see that you're struggling type thing. But I will admit that is hard for me as a woman who was not raised that way. It's really been a rewiring for myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, you want to meet them where they're at, and that is something. That's what I do with my clients all the time, right? It's like, it's okay. Wherever you're at, that's where we start. But it doesn't mean that we don't carry that baggage with us where we're so frustrated, like, why am I here? Why did this happen? It's and all of those stories that swirl. And then I think we can have those as parents as well. It's like, and then we can have them, we can have them for our children. We can have them with our children. I know my eldest, who, I mean, again, both of my children are incredibly creative and incredibly capable. And my eldest will come home. He's in accelerated courses. Right now, he's taking college physics. I mean, he's getting by he's getting through it by the skin of his teeth, let's say. And he's fighting the good fight. And he's like, never again. And I'm like, but I'm so proud of you for fighting the good fight. And this is so challenging. But he gets frustrated when he's in class with others who don't have these same challenges. And even though he is, he goes to therapy and he is, he has a maturity about him and an understanding logically, I can still see the frustration sometimes. I mean, he gets through it and he has the best attitude, and I'm so incredibly proud of him. But I also can feel that frustration when he's like, these other friends don't have this issue. I'm like, I know, and that sucks, but you work with what you've got. And so yeah, it's a constant conversation with each other and with ourselves, and a constant sort of reassurance. And none of this is easy.
My son is 9, and he has realized more so this year in fourth grade that his peers do not have the same challenges that he has. He can't verbalize it very well, but he'll say things like, Mom, the girls, they never get in trouble. And I'm like, well, yeah, because we're different. Or you try to make light of it. But he, even at such a young age, has picked up on some kids in his class don't have the same challenges as him. I
Mhm.
hate that.
Yeah, the conversation that we've had surrounding this, and we've also been so blessed with a really good doctor who's been so supportive and talking about like this sort of how do you fit in, and the whole like square peg round hole, or it's that differentiation and also expectations in certain areas or constructs. And so part of the conversation I have with my kiddos, and one of them is 17 and one is 14 now, but I mean, we've been dealing with this for years.
Mm,
We have the conversation that, well, in certain parts of your life, you are going to be sort of forced to, quote, fit in or to get through it in different ways. But I promise you that you will be able to step out of that. Like, in other words, right now, classic public high school structure is something they need to get through, if you will, in some
yeah.
ways, right? And that they might not be it really, it hurts my heart to think that your kiddo is feeling like, well, getting in trouble because there are these expectations in terms of behavior and things like that. But it's maybe the reassurance that it's like, okay, well, that's in this particular time of your life, and he might be a little young to understand that there's something else out there right now. As teens, I think they're starting to realize, oh, once I finish this part of my life, um, I'm going to be able to make different choices. I'm going to be able to control things. I talk a lot in terms of like the productivity coach perspective, where I
Mm.
say, when we look at how you can structure your ideal day, when we look at your energy levels, when we look at your circadian rhythm, I mean, I know that neither of them are morning people, right? I'm not a morning person either. And I was like, when you get to a college level, if that's what you choose to do, you may be able to structure your schedule where you have afternoon and evening classes instead that can match your energy better.
Yeah.
And, can you'll be able to change your world to one that fits you better. Right now, you're forced into a world that you may not fit right, but hang in there and do your best.
Yeah. We do have my kiddo in school-based therapy, so I hope that helps him to see that. But also, and this may not be the best approach, but I didn't know what else to do at the time, we make light of the people who actually fit in the box and how boring that must be, never to their faces. But, I didn't know what else to do when he started internalizing that. And I was like, yeah, we weren't born to fit in that box. I was like, think
Mhm.
about how boring it would be to be able to sit still for 7 hours a day. And so for the past 2 or so years, we've giggled about it. But so hopefully that'll help a little bit.
Well, I think that's beautiful in that what you're trying to do it's sort of like the this sort of the taking the like the converse approach, or like an absurd approach of be like, well, look at what they have to deal
Yeah.
with, right? It's reframing it, I guess, is
Yeah.
maybe the best way to describe it. But it's reframing it in a way that says, look at what you have to offer. And I love that, and it's something I talk with my kids about all the time. And as uh, one of the first books that I ever read that kind of clued me into ADHD is not simply something to deal with, but has the potential to be a superpower, was Peter Shankman's Faster Than Normal.
Mm.
And that's a really cool book on, sort of like turbocharging your productivity, or some
Yeah.
premise like that, and I happened to pick it up. But the aha moment for me with that was, oh, wait. So yeah, your brain isn't functioning in the same way, but where's the opportunity in that?
Yeah.
And then I understood, oh, hyperfocus. Of course. This is why, my eldest, who cannot clean his room to save his life and really struggles with basic chore tasks, can learn guitar in less than, oh my goodness, how I'm trying to remember how long. It's less than 4 years now, to the point where he's shredding like a rock star and leading a
Wow.
band, and they have
Wow.
multiple gigs, and he's an incredible musician, and I can see the hyper focus in that.
Yeah.
And so we talk so much about how, yes, you may struggle in a traditional school setting,
Yeah.
and you may struggle because you look me straight in the face and I say, please, you
Nope.
know, go do this task for me, and then you forget.
Yeah.
But you also, have one of the best musical brains that I've ever witnessed, and you
Yeah.
are going to go incredible places. So let's also appreciate what it gives you. And yeah, the ability to hyper focus, the ability to connect the dots in different ways, to see the world from a different perspective, that is a gift.
I love that. One very quick story, and then I know the listeners are like, girl, give us the productivity hacks. But my son wants to play basketball. He calls it his jam. That's his jam right now. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I wonder if there is a basketball player out there who has ADHD. And to my shock, Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time, has ADHD and used his hyperfocus to become the greatest of all time. So I read him the story on that, and now every Sunday I try to read him a story of a successful person who has ADHD so that he can see, like you said, these next few years, they might not be the greatest, but one day the hyper focus is going to take you so, so far.
Well, I'll add one to your list if you'd like. I was I I'm not even joking that I was just talking about him this morning, and I did this like because I have the weird connectivity too, which really helps as a coach, where I like bounce from one idea to the next,
Mm,
and I was thinking about Michael Phelps and how many
yeah,
Olympic medals he won, and I was like, wait, does he have ADHD? I feel like that was mentioned. And so I had a really interesting conversation with my eldest about that. And so he's taking a new stance, which I think is so important, which is that we don't want to like constantly be making it a thing or diagnosing other people. I'm like, you're absolutely right. But also the more that we can allow it to simply be part of a description of someone to say, these are the elements. And I'm not saying it's the most interesting thing, but when we stop to think about what makes them tick,
yeah,
and that hyper focus is magical. Yeah,
yeah,
Michael Phelps is one of them as well. So that boy has a lot of Olympic medals.
yeah.
So I would add him to your list of stories to tell. I love that.
I for sure will. Of course, he's 9 and he's not addicted to basketball, but that is his thing. And so,
Yeah.
any sports, any athlete that I can throw in there, that is his thing. That's the only thing that keeps his attention. I've had to find athlete reading passages for reading comprehension just so that he will sit down and actually want to read it. So, I appreciate that.
But leaning into that, that's so smart. It's like finding the thing that they love
Yeah.
and then connecting to it, using it as a reward, using it as the context in which it will keep their attention. Classic case again with my eldest, who is my rock star, literally.
Mm.
He was having a band rehearsal because they have their first real official gig coming up this Friday. And so I said to him, we have a lot of work to do to clean up the studio, get prepared for your band, reconnect the equipment because we had just done an open mic. And he looked at me and he's like, "No, I'm on it, mom, because this is something I want to do."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Well,
for
there you
sure.
go. That's a life lesson for all of us."
For sure. I can relate to that so much. And I guess that brings me to my next question. I'm thinking while you're talking through your kiddos' challenges and your husband, is that what led you to create your business?
Actually, it was the compassionate side of living life as a caregiver
Hmm.
that brought me to create my business. And then I realized, like, what am I doing that's different? And that happens a lot, I think, where you create a business and you look at the industry and you're like, what's something you're not happy with that you think needs or could be done better, right? And for me, it's this hustle and grind, this push, this whole productivity, 10x your productivity. It's very type A, it's very structured, it's very much in line with the institutions that we know. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with it and it works for many people, there's this subset of the population it doesn't work for. And they're not only left out because it doesn't work for them, they're left to feel that shame and that guilt and that frustration.
Hmm.
And I realize these are the people that the traditional productivity tactics simply don't work for. And I want to step in and be like, wait, it's okay. It's I swear it's not you, it's them. It's a like there is a way. And those are the caregivers who are exhausted, the multi-passionate creatives, of which I'm one. I love all the different things. And I see that a lot overlapped with people with ADHD. So
Hmm.
those who have neurodiverse minds are often really interested in scanning. They learn quickly, so they want to try new and different things, and they also seek variety, right? So there's a lot of overlap there. So I get that. And then, of course, too, there are those who deal with chronic illnesses or chronic challenges. And all of what those people have in common is that it's not like this the standard box life, right? Like you were saying, the way that you encourage your kiddo is, you're not the person who can sit there for 7 hours and not move and not need to get up and be able to just do it like they originally taught you.
Yeah.
Which is a construct that dates way, way back and had its place but doesn't fit anymore. There has to be a different way. Honors our personality, our values, our core strengths and our core values and our character strengths and our quirks and our idiosyncrasies and even just like our energy levels, right? And you've seen that. Yes, there's hyperactivity, but there's also crashes. There's also times when we are simply not functioning and yet we feel like we're, quote, supposed to be productive. So it's all of those things together. My desire to show people a more compassionate way that you can still create the systems to get what you want to get done, but do it in a way that honors you.
I feel like you are speaking to me 3 hours ago when I was Tuesday mornings before I start interviews for the podcast. I try to get out all of my social promotions. I try to get all that scheduled. And I was
Mhm.
like, man, I just feel so rushed. Like, this does not feel fun. And there has to be an easier way. So that leads me into my next question. You have a pretty dynamic framework that is changing lives, and I would love to hear about that. Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today.
So that's a big question, right?
It is.
Because the framework that I'm working with, so there's a couple of things, and maybe it's more concepts. So I want to be careful that in sharing ideas and sharing solutions that I don't overwhelm, because then it becomes the very opposite. And that's one of the things I would caution is that there are so many, quote, solutions out there, but a lot of times they actually become the problems because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the first concept, and maybe this is the thing. This is the takeaway, because when you listen to a podcast and you are inspired, walk away with one thing that's like an aha that feels like it's talking to you. It's talking to you from 3 hours ago. It's talking to you and it resonates. And start with that one thing and start tiny. So let's start with this idea that when life's not adding up, when you are really frustrated, you want to subtract. I think we as humans are constantly thinking, how do I fix this? What new system? What new app? What new platform? What new calendar? What new planner? You're nodding at me, so I can feel
Aggressively.
you, right? Right, exactly. What's going to fix it? What can I add? What can I grab? What can I learn? What can I do that's going to make this better? And I'm saying that the action of subtracting is the first step. And that means I call it whole life decluttering because, again, I was a professional organizer. And before we ever organized anything, we
Take away.
decluttered, right? Because you do not want to organize what you don't intend to keep. It's wasted space, it's wasted energy. And if you start to think about that, you can think about that in your closet, right? Don't try to organize all the stuff when you're like, why am I keeping those shoes? Like they were cool in the 90s. Okay, maybe they're making a comeback now. But the point is, like, why do I have this stuff in there that I'm never wearing, I'm not using, doesn't make sense, isn't mine, whatever it is, doesn't belong. You can think about that in your closet. Now I want you to think about that on your to-do list, in your head, any of the spaces in your life where there's just too much there, and especially so when you have ADHD.
That is so good. And as you were saying that, I mean, this applies to obviously neurotypicals too, but
Yeah.
the way our brains, my brain, is so cluttered, it's like I really need to pick and choose what I spend my energy on because so often it's like, oh, there's the next shiny thing. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. I have to really like reel that in because if not, then I'm adding something else that I won't finish or won't complete or that isn't helpful.
Yeah, and the idea of full brains is not solely for neurodiverse. It's for everyone, and you see it again with caregivers, with the mental load of moms, of parents. You see it everywhere. If you are in charge of other
Mm,
humans, if you are multi-passionate and you have many irons in the fire because you love things, all of these things cause an overwhelm, and it's finding that gentle balance, and it's being selective, and you describe that. It's like, where am I going to place my energy? So yeah, my framework actually begins with the idea that we need to figure out how to simplify, how to subtract.
mm,
And so there's a couple different ways, but the biggest one I think for me is the mental the mental load, and making sure that we have a tactic to declutter our brains as much as possible and have systems that we can rely on, safe spaces to hold the
mm,
stuff. And so I work like along the lines of David Allen's system, Getting Things Done. And he talks about a mind sweep, and sometimes people will call that a brain dump. And the way that I work with clients is that I recommend to my audience in general, is to do this kind of mind sweep and to do it regularly. But to understand that when you take all the stuff out of your brain and you put it in a safe spot in a notebook or whatever,
mm,
that it's incredibly important to understand that that is not your to do list. That is your to choose list.
mm. That is so good because my to-do list has about 17 things on it, but my to choose list can be narrowed down. Ah, that is so good.
Right. Exactly. And that's those 17 things. So when we start to think about life and all this, and clutter in our lives in all these different ways, and even having a to-do list that's cluttered, it's going to be so overwhelming that it's going to take you out of it. And then your squirrel brain is going to be like, and we're doing something else. What's on Netflix? Like it's not going to work. But if you have three select
Mm,
things that you've taken from that pool that to choose, right? And you're like, those are the things that I would feel good about achieving
mm.
today. I'm going to have a couple of podcast interviews with people named Lisa today. I'm going to post on Instagram, and that's it, and maybe, take care of a few more things, and then done. And I usually say, three-ish, three big ones. Three is a magic number according to Schoolhouse Rock, and I do believe in what Schoolhouse Rock has to say.
Yes.
That goes way back, but yeah, it's the idea of, again, being selective and leaning into the fewer the better. There's another great book by Greg McKeown called Essentialism, and his tagline is essentially less but better.
Mm,
And I live by that premise, and I think it's especially important if you have a neurodiverse mind. And again, sometimes I want to say, what even is neurotypical? We are all overwhelmed in one way or another. Some of us more than others, some of us in different ways. It's really understanding what tool is right for when. But the good news is that for all of us, the tool of selectivity and being intentional in what we do, what it's for, and when we do it, that's going to help you in huge ways.
mm. You just gave me a reframe that I am going to take away from this. I have been saying the three things that will move the needle,
Mhm.
but I would much rather like the way you said it with the three things that will make me feel accomplished or make me feel satisfied with today. And I like that much better than the three things that will move the needle.
Oh, yay. I love that because that's what we have to do is get to the end of the day where we can lay our head on the pillow and say, I've done my best.
Mm,
And I'm good with that. And look at me go. And sometimes I will tell you, like, I know in my life, some of the projects that I'm working on, the way that I chip away at them feels painstakingly slow. And I'm not always good about being
yeah.
patient, but I also understand I'm one person
Mm,
with a finite amount of energy trying to handle and be loving and supportive of a group of people that I think the world of in the sea of ADHD
mm,
and and my own like brain fog and issues who knows even what that is and in order to be compassionate and in order to be successful I need to keep it small and and keep those like tiny steps which by the way we can now make parallel to this is the same concept when we create habits.
mm.
We start with the tiniest step on repeat. And that's another thing that you've brought up many times in this show and is so incredibly important for us is finding consistency. And the best way to find consistency is with the simplest, smallest thing.
Yeah.
And it can be hard because we have this ambition, we have these expectations, sometimes feel obligated, but we need to step back and be like, okay, it doesn't feel like much, but over time it will be. I need to trust the process.
Mm. Ah, that is so good. So after we declutter our to choose list
Yeah.
and our brain, because I could always do that, what would be our next steps for productivity?
So let's talk about the to do list and talk about like once you have so you have your to choose list, if you will, and that's your ongoing pool of potential things, right? Now we can organize it a little bit in a way where we are consistently heading toward the simplest and the smallest. When I said, try to pick a few things to do today or this week or whatever, and you might be like, yeah, there's still so much. Here are a few steps that you can take to narrow it down further. So the first thing uh, would be, in fact, decluttering in an even like more aggressive way. And what I mean by this, so I mentioned you don't want to add, um, you know, uh, on a list, you don't want to list what you don't intend to do,
Mm,
right? You don't want to organize what you don't intend to do. So you need to ask yourself, okay, I had this in my brain. I've been meaning to do this. It's been on there for it's been on that to-do list I used to have. Now I'm trying the new one, Lisa said. But uh, oh, wait, does that even still apply to me anymore? If it's lingering, if it's outdated, if it was an obligation, if you felt like it was urgent, but you're just not getting to it, and then you say, whose urgent was it? This came from someone else. Really think about what doesn't belong. What you're like, I just need to let this go. And it's okay. Now, that's one thing. And so that's a delete. Now, if you're like, oh, wait, don't worry, I have a few other options for you, just a few more. One is delegating. How about you get someone else to do it? And the way that you ask this question of yourself, you're looking at the list, you've pulled, these are important things to you from that to choose, right? And even like organizing the to choose, you're like, oh, hmm, I still want this on the list. I can't get rid of it, but how can it get done? And you'll notice when I ask that question, passive voice, we're allowing because you want your brain to start getting creative. Like, how can it get done? I could ask a friend. I could ask a colleague. I could hire someone. I could automate it. Don't forget, automation can be a great way to delegate things. And oh, automation is like a rock star for people with ADHD.
mm. Yes, it is.
The less you have to think about and the more it's just working in the background like hot dog. Okay. So yeah, how can it get done? Great example, bill paying, right? Something like that. Well, put it on auto pay, and check that. And then maybe set yourself a reminder, a timer to go in, just double check everything's cool with the banking and stuff like that. Then the next thing, and by the way, this is a framework I call the 4 Ds. And sometimes people have 3 Ds. There's many Ds out there, but the 4 Ds go in this order because we're chipping away and trying to make it the smallest and the simplest for you. So we've deleted and we've delegated. The next one is really helpful when you have stuff that you're like, oh, that's a bright, shiny object and it's so cool. And my brain is like, I want to learn this thing and I love it and I think it's awesome. But realistically, you're also like, oh, I can't do this right now. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the capacity. What do I do? You can delay it. Delay it intentionally. It doesn't have to be a someday, but it's also a not now.
Yeah.
So you can put a timer on it. You can set yourself a reminder 6 months from now to review this really cool system that you thought you wanted to try or this project that you think would be awesome. You don't have to remove it. You don't have to delegate it, but you defer it until a time when you have the capacity and maybe even a perspective that allows you to make a better decision about it. And do you know the feeling where you have something lingering on your list and you're not getting to it? How does it make you feel?
Pretty hard on myself and cruddy.
Yeah. And if you were to take one of those things today and say, I really don't have the capacity, I'm not getting to it, obviously. What if I looked at it 3 months from now, next quarter, and I removed that from the list so it's not on repeat, not getting done, which is mental clutter and a guilt trip that you don't need. Thank you very much. Plenty out there. What if you did that? How would that feel? How does it even feel when I describe it that way? You intentionally set it to the side for 3 months, review it then, see how you feel.
Yeah, I think it's sheer genius because for me right now, I am transitioning to second quarter. Second quarter, the kid has spring break, fourth grade graduation, end of year banquets, and stuff like that. However, the summer months are coming up where I'll have plenty of time to do all those 17 things on my to choose list, and I won't feel guilty about seeing them every day because I know they're planned for the future. I think that is fantastic.
I love that. And then what you've also described there is a seasonal kind of
Yeah.
planning and allowing. I have a great episode on my podcast with Eric Fisher talking about seasonal planning as being a great option for neurodiverse entrepreneurs because of that sort of that ebb and flow. And then for mamas who have like, yeah, the what they call it Maycember kind of
Yeah.
stuff coming up, the end of school kind of stuff,
Yes.
is to be like, okay, now's a time to back off. And yeah, these tactics, the 4 Ds, are a way to be able to intentionally and specifically back off on what you're doing. And by the way, the last D, the fourth D, is do. And so once you've deleted what doesn't belong, delegated what you can, and delayed what you know you don't have the capacity for, or maybe you just need to review another time, now what you have left is a much more reasonable to-do list,
Yeah.
right? Now you can apply all of the really cool techniques. Now you can say, here's what I need to do. How do I prioritize these items? Maybe set Pomodoro timers if that works for my brain. You apply all the traditional techniques that will work for you. And maybe body doubling and getting, banging out the tasks, whatever it is, you do it with that smaller subset that's your real to-do list.
That's so transformative. You are like, girl, you're talking to me today. I don't know. Well, me 2, 3 hours ago, but
That works. I love it.
that is so good. That is so good. I love that. I didn't even realize that's what I was doing, but until we were just talking it out. But I don't need to feel the pressure to get all of those things on my to-do list because hopefully mom me who's sitting by the pool in a few months will have time to map this out or read this or watch this and just be able to focus on what I want to do and not feel pressured to do it in the next 2 months, which are going to be chaotic.
Yeah. And future you in the next 2 months will be so grateful for past you who said, hey, let's not even have that on our list right now.
Yeah. It is so good. So I am sure our neurodiverse crowd are like, girl, where can we work with Lisa and how do we get to her? So please share every connection that you have where people can find you.
I would love that. Thank you for asking. So, the hub, the simplest place that you can start and then find all the other places would be positivelyproductive.com. You are listening to an amazing podcast right now, and I'd be honored if you wanted to hop over and listen to mine as well. There's a lot of complimentary information. It's called Positively Living, and it's shame-free productivity conversations. And there's so much that will apply to your life, and that would be wonderful. And if you want to have a little bit of fun. I mean, I am on the different socials, but the place where we have the most fun, where perhaps I am the most ridiculous, and we can laugh a bit because it is so important for us to have some fun while we're figuring all this out, would be on Instagram and my reels. Well, you'll just have to see them for yourself. And I'm at positively_Lisa over there. So come visit me, say hi.
I will, of course, link all of that in the show notes, but I'm sure that our neurotypical moms who are listening or dads are listening and they're like, girl, I need her because what the heck? So I'm sure the neurotypicals that are listening for their children here are like, yes, I'm coming. And I bet they can relate so well to your colorful life.
Exactly. I get it. I've lived it. I'm living it right now. And yeah, if it's for all of us because in some capacity we're all overwhelmed and most importantly we're all looking for the right path for us because I think true productivity comes from doing the right things at the right time, the right way for you. And that's something that's unique to every one of us.
Well, I was going to ask you for an outro one-liner, but I think that was it.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could anticipate your needs.
Man, I'm going to love listening to this again and again. You have dropped bombshell after bombshell for me.
Well, that's wonderful, Danielle. It's really been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Phew. Okay, friends, take a breath with me because Lisa just gave us a masterclass in reclaiming our calm without losing my damn mind in the process. From honoring our energy to creating systems that actually make sense for our ADHD brains and busy family lives, can we just take a moment to appreciate how seen we feel right now? If you're like me and already bookmarking her advice in your brain's Save Me Later folder, don't forget to check out her podcast, Positively Living, and connect with her over at Positively Productive Systems. Trust me, Lisa's the kind of coach who doesn't just preach productivity, she lives it, breathes it, and makes it doable for the rest of us who are juggling snacks, meltdowns, and 47 open tabs in our own brains at all times. As always, thank you for spending a little slice of your beautifully chaotic day with me here on Chaos and Caffeine. If today's episode gave you a little clarity, a few deep breaths, or at the very least, a good laugh, you know what to do. Subscribe, leave a review, but more importantly, share it with a fellow mama who's living the ADHD parenting roller coaster right alongside us. Until next time, go easy on yourself, drink the coffee while it's hot if you can, and remember there's no such thing as a perfect system, but there is a perfectly good you. Bye!